I don't think you understand Mississippi. This is a high-end restaurant, not a fast food joint. Alex Johnson's voice was cold, his words cutting through the air like a sharp blade. He leaned back in his chair, a smug grin playing on his lips as he glanced around at his friends, all of whom chuckled under their breath. The last thing he expected from a waitress was competence. He had seen it all before. People in the service industry who barely knew how to manage basic requests, let alone speak more than one language. But tonight, he was in for a surprise. Emma Davis, standing near his table, trying her best to ignore the disdain in his voice, felt her cheeks flush. She had heard it all before. The condescending remarks, the superiority of the rich, none of it was new to her. But this was different. Alex had mocked her for not understanding his casual jab in Italian. She kept her cool, balancing the water pitcher in her hand, before placing it down in front of him. I'm sorry, sir, I don't believe that's on the menu. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Excuse me. Alex raised an eyebrow, his fingers drumming on the edge of his glass. He wasn't used to people challenging him, let alone in such a way. The dish you just ordered, it's not on the menu, sir, Emma repeated, locking eyes with him for the first time. There was no fear, no hesitation, just a calm certainty that seemed to disarm him. His friends were still laughing, enjoying the show, but Alex found himself staring at her for a moment longer than he intended. There was something about her composure, her quiet strength. He hadn't expected that from a waitress. Did you just correct me? Alex's tone was incredulous, and the entire table went quiet for a moment. I did, sir, Emma said, her voice steady. But if you're interested, I could help you with your order. Alex sat up straighter, his curiosity piqued. This wasn't the reaction he expected. Most people would cower under his gaze, afraid of losing their job. Not her. Fine, go ahead, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Help me out, then. What should I order? Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned slightly forward, her gaze not leaving his. As she replied, If I may, sir, I would recommend the beef Wellington. It's the most popular dish here, and it's been getting rave reviews lately. There was a pause, and then, to his shock, Alex realized she was speaking flawless English, without any hint of an accent. He frowned, then looked at her again. Something was off. You speak English fluently? He asked, surprised. I do, Emma replied simply. In fact, I speak a few languages. Alex raised an eyebrow, wondering if she was playing some kind of game with him. A few languages? What, like French or Spanish? I can speak French, Spanish, and Italian, but I also studied linguistics for a time, Emma explained, her eyes not leaving his. I had to quit, though. The table fell silent as the others processed the information. Alex, however, was not expecting this. He leaned forward, intrigued. Why'd you quit? He asked, his voice less dismissive now, more curious. Emma's smile was brief but genuine. Family reasons, she said, her eyes softening. Alex stared at her for a moment longer, his mind racing. She was more than just a waitress. She was intelligent, capable, someone who could have gone far, but had chosen this life for a reason. A quiet realization began to settle over him. He had underestimated her in the worst way possible. I didn't expect that, Alex said, suddenly aware of how much he had just taken for granted. The smug arrogance that had once dominated his demeanor began to fade, replaced by something else. Respect. I owe you an apology, Emma, he said, his voice quieter now. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Emma's eyes met his, but there was no hint of satisfaction in her gaze, just calm understanding. I appreciate that, sir, she replied, her tone warm but professional. But it's not necessary. You just needed to be reminded that not everything is as it seems. As Emma turned to leave, Alex felt a strange shift within him. He had expected the usual dismissive service, the kind of staff who might crumble under a rich man's scorn. But Emma? She was different. He watched her move through the restaurant with an elegance that didn't match her uniform. Her posture was poised, her every step deliberate, almost as if she belonged somewhere far grander than this high-end restaurant. The clinking of glasses, the murmurs of his friends, all of it faded into the background as his thoughts fixated on her. I can't believe that just happened, one of Alex's friends, Mark, said, snapping him back to the present. I thought she was going to cry or something, but she just handled it. Alex finished for him, still watching Emma as she moved from table to table. Yeah, Mark continued. She was way too calm for someone who just got insulted. Alex nodded slowly. He couldn't stop thinking about her words. She had been right about the menu. She had been right about the misunderstanding. And she had corrected him in a way that had made him look foolish in front of his friends. A small smirk tugged at his lips as he realized that, despite his wealth, he had just been put in his place. She's something else, Alex murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. You're really not going to let it go, are you? Mark teased, nudging him. Alex shook his head, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. I don't know. She's different, that's all. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Emma returned shortly after, her movements graceful as she made her way over to their table. She placed Alex's meal in front of him with a quiet professionalism, not a trace of what had happened earlier in her demeanor. Alex watched her closely, waiting for some hint of how she was feeling. But she didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing. Enjoy your meal, sir, she said, her voice soft but firm. There was no animosity, no sign of resentment. Just the same calm professionalism as before. Alex stared at her for a moment longer than he intended. Emma, he said, his voice catching her attention. She turned to face him, her brow slightly raised in polite curiosity. I didn't mean to offend you earlier. I'm sorry, Alex said, his voice uncharacteristically sincere. Emma paused for a moment, looking him over with an unreadable expression. Then she gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. It's all right, sir. It happens. No, Alex insisted, his voice softening. I shouldn't have treated you that way. You handled it better than I would have. Emma didn't reply immediately. Instead, she simply nodded. Thank you, sir, she said, before walking away without another word. As she disappeared into the crowd of diners, Alex sat back in his chair, his mind racing. What had just happened? Why did he feel humbled? It was just a moment, a brief exchange. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something inside of him had changed, and he didn't know if he was ready for it. His friends resumed their conversation, but Alex found it hard to focus. All he could think about was Emma, the quiet waitress who had, without even trying, made him rethink his entire perspective on power and respect. The evening carried on, but for Alex, it felt like time had slowed down. The clinking of silverware and the hum of conversation around him seemed distant, almost surreal. His mind kept circling back to Emma. He watched her as she moved gracefully between the tables, her every step measured, yet effortless. Her professionalism was clear, but there was something else, something that he hadn't noticed before. As he sat there, Alex found himself wondering about her life, about the choices she had made. The way she handled herself, the calmness she exuded, and the way she didn't back down, it all intrigued him. He hadn't felt this way in a long time. Not since he'd built his company, not since he'd been surrounded by people who were always eager to please him. There was a quiet strength in Emma that he found compelling. The night continued, but as he looked at her, he realized that his usual arrogance was slowly being replaced by a deep curiosity. As the dinner concluded and Alex prepared to leave, he found himself walking toward the exit at a slower pace than usual. He didn't want to rush through this night. Not this time. As he reached the door, he turned around, searching the restaurant for Emma. He found her, standing near the bar, her back to him as she wiped down the counter. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. He had apologized earlier, but something told him it wasn't enough. Something in him wanted to do more, to understand her more. He took a deep breath and approached her. Emma, he said softly, and she turned at the sound of his voice. You're leaving already, sir? She asked, her expression neutral but polite. I wanted to thank you again, Alex said, his voice a little quieter than usual. Emma raised an eyebrow. You've already done that. I know, but I didn't just mean for what happened earlier, he continued, stepping a little closer. I mean for everything. The way you've handled yourself tonight. It's not easy, dealing with people like me, and yet you did it with such grace. Emma's eyes flickered for a moment, and then she gave a small smile. It's my job, sir, she replied, but there was a softness in her voice that hadn't been there before. Alex could tell that she wasn't just saying that out of politeness. She truly believed it. I think you're much more than just your job, he said, his words coming out before he could stop them. The moment hung in the air between them. For the first time, Emma looked slightly taken aback, but she quickly masked it with a composed expression. "Thank you, sir," she said again, her voice steady. "But I really must get back to work." Alex nodded, though he wasn't ready to leave just yet. "I hope we can talk more sometime," he said, his voice soft. "I'd like that," Emma replied, offering a small smile before turning back to her work. Alex stood there for a moment longer, watching her. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he had all the answers. In fact, he felt a bit lost. But there was something about Emma, something that made him want to know more, something that made him want to be a better version of himself. With one last glance at her, he turned and walked out of the restaurant, his thoughts swirling with a mix of respect and curiosity. Emma watched him go, her eyes thoughtful. She wasn't sure what it was, but something about the way he looked at her, something had changed in him. She had seen it. She had felt it. And for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this life than what she had always known. The next few days passed in a blur for Alex. Despite his busy schedule, his thoughts kept drifting back to Emma. He couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted inside him during that brief encounter. He was used to being the one in control, the one people looked up to. But Emma had shown him something he hadn't seen in a long time. A kind of quiet strength, a humility that made him rethink everything he thought he knew about people like her. The morning after their brief exchange, Alex found himself sitting in his office, staring at his laptop screen without really seeing anything. He had a list of meetings to attend, calls to make, deals to close. But none of it seemed to matter as much as the thought of her. The sound of his phone buzzing pulled him out of his thoughts. It was a reminder about a lunch meeting with a potential client, someone he had been meaning to talk to for weeks. He sighed, pushed his thoughts of Emma aside, and got back to work. As the day wore on, Alex found himself sitting at the conference table, trying to focus on the numbers being discussed. But his mind kept wandering back to that small, intimate moment at the restaurant. Emma's calm presence, the way she carried herself with such grace, made everything around him feel insignificant. As the meeting ended, Alex stood up, his thoughts once again on Emma. He needed to see her again. He wasn't sure why, but he had to. The next evening, Alex found himself walking into the same restaurant. He hadn't planned on it, but something about the place, and her, pulled him in. He took a seat at a corner table, scanning the room for her. When he finally spotted her, she was moving through the restaurant, taking orders, effortlessly gliding from one table to the next. She didn't notice him at first, but when their eyes met, Alex saw a flicker of recognition in her gaze. She gave him a polite nod before turning to greet another guest. It felt like nothing had changed, yet everything had. Alex couldn't explain why, but he felt this strange pull, like he needed to make things right, like there was something he had left unfinished. He didn't know what that was yet, but he was determined to figure it out. After a few moments, Emma made her way over to him. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice calm and professional as always. "May I take your order?" Alex hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "I'm not here for dinner," he said. "I just wanted to talk." Emma raised an eyebrow slightly, but didn't say anything. "I'm listening," she replied. Alex leaned back in his chair, searching for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened the other night," he began. I don't usually find myself reconsidering anything. But you really got me thinking." Emma nodded, waiting for him to continue. "You were right. I was wrong to treat you the way I did," Alex said, his voice sincere. "And I wanted to apologize again. Not because you demanded it, but because I've realized something about myself. I've spent so much time thinking I have it all figured out, but the truth is, I don't. Not about everything. Not about people like you." Emma's eyes softened, but she remained silent, allowing him to speak. "I think I've been underestimating people for a long time," Alex continued. "People like you, who work hard, who are smarter than anyone gives them credit for. And I want to change that. I want to see things differently." Emma looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. "It's not about what you think of me, Mr. Johnson," she said quietly. "It's about how you treat others. That's what matters." Alex nodded, realizing the truth in her words. He had always judged people based on what they could do for him, never considering what they might bring to the table on their own. He had been wrong. "I'll do better," he said, his voice steady. "I promise." Emma didn't respond right away. Instead, she simply smiled, genuine and warm, a smile that reached her eyes. "I'll believe it when I see it, sir," she said, before turning to leave. Alex watched her walk away, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe he wasn't entirely lost after all. Maybe there was hope for him yet. The days following Alex's visit to the restaurant were strange. He couldn't stop thinking about Emma, the quiet waitress who had shown him a side of life he had long ignored. He had tried to focus on his usual business meetings, the relentless flow of deals, and the demands of his company, but all of it seemed trivial in comparison to what had happened. His usual arrogance had been chipped away, revealing something he hadn't even realized was buried deep inside him. A genuine desire to connect, to understand, and to see beyond the surface of the people around him. One afternoon, while preparing for yet another business meeting, Alex found himself staring at his phone, unable to concentrate. His thoughts kept drifting back to the last conversation with Emma. Her words, her calm demeanor, and the way she had held her ground in the face of his mockery. It was a stark contrast to the world he was used to. In his world, people were either a means to an end or tools to further his own success. But Emma? She didn't fit into any of those categories. There was something about her that made him think differently about the people who served him. His phone buzzed with a reminder about the meeting, snapping him out of his reverie. He sighed, slid his phone into his pocket, and got up to face the day. But the nagging feeling in his chest didn't go away. He had to see her again. It wasn't just an apology anymore. It was a need to understand who she really was. Later that evening, Alex found himself walking into the same restaurant again. This time, he wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he knew he had to speak to her. As he stepped inside, the familiar hum of conversation and clinking silverware greeted him. His eyes immediately searched the room, looking for Emma. He spotted her near the back, taking an order from a table of well-dressed patrons. She hadn't noticed him yet, and for a moment, Alex just stood there, watching her. There was something about the way she moved, so composed, so in control of her surroundings despite the chaos. It was a stark contrast to the way he had once viewed people like her, people who existed only to serve. As Emma turned to head toward the kitchen, she caught sight of him. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second, but then her professional mask slid back into place. She made her way over to him, her steps steady and purposeful. "Good evening, sir," she greeted him, her voice as polite and professional as ever. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." Alex smiled, though it was softer than usual. "I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome," he said, his voice a little more humble than he intended. Emma raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. "I wanted to thank you," Alex continued, "for what happened the other night. I've been thinking about it a lot, about what you said and how you handled everything. You were right. I've spent too much time thinking I have all the answers, when in reality, I've missed a lot. Missed people. People like you." Emma's eyes softened, but her expression remained unreadable. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she simply nodded. "It's not about what you think of me, Mr. Johnson," she said quietly. "It's about how you treat others." Alex nodded, taking her words to heart. "I get that now," he said. "I didn't see it before, but I do now. And I want to change that. I want to do better." Emma paused for a moment, her gaze meeting his. For a moment, it felt like time had slowed down. Alex could see something in her eyes, something that told him she wasn't sure whether to believe him. But then, as if coming to a decision, she gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I'm glad to hear that," she said, her voice warm, but still guarded. "It's a start." Alex watched her for a moment longer, feeling something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was something else. Either way, he knew this was just the beginning. He wasn't sure what would come next, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to find out. Weeks passed, and though Alex's life continued as usual, board meetings, corporate decisions, and endless negotiations, there was a constant undercurrent in his thoughts, one that he couldn't ignore. Emma, her presence, her words, and the subtle transformation he felt in himself. It was like a ripple in the calm surface of his world, and it had left an indelible mark. One evening, after a long day at work, Alex found himself walking through the city streets, not really sure where he was going. His mind was buzzing, thinking back to his recent interactions with Emma. He realized something. The respect he felt for her wasn't just about her ability to handle the job or her intelligence. It was about her values. Her unwavering belief in treating people with dignity, her calmness in the face of mockery, her refusal to be intimidated. It was all a reflection of something Alex hadn't truly considered before. That real power wasn't about wealth or influence. It was about how one treated others. It was about integrity. He stopped outside a cafe, watching people as they passed by. He had everything: money, success, influence. But none of it seemed to matter as much as the genuine connection he felt was missing in his life. As he stood there, he realized that his recent interactions with Emma had shown him a side of himself he didn't even know existed. It was a vulnerability he'd always avoided, but now he saw it as a strength. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for by coming here again, but he knew he had to see her. Alex entered the restaurant with a sense of purpose, no longer unsure of himself. He approached the counter, looking for Emma. She was there, taking orders, moving with the same grace and efficiency that he had come to admire. This time, as their eyes met, there was no hesitation. Alex walked over to her, his heart beating a little faster than he expected. "Emma," he said, and she looked up, her expression polite but warm. "Good evening, Mr. Johnson," she greeted him, her voice steady. "What can I get you today?" Alex paused for a moment, his gaze softening. "I'm not here for dinner," he said. "I just wanted to talk." Again, Emma raised an eyebrow, a small, knowing smile appearing on her face. "All right," she said. "Let's talk." They both walked to a quieter corner of the restaurant, away from the bustling noise of the dinner rush. Alex took a seat, his hands resting on the table, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel out of place. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Alex began, his voice thoughtful. "About everything. About how I've treated people, about the way I've lived my life, and what I've been missing." Emma listened, her expression unreadable, but her eyes kind. "And what have you realized?" she asked, her voice calm. Alex looked at her, feeling a sense of openness he wasn't used to. "I realized that I've spent so much of my life focused on success, on building my empire, that I forgot about what truly matters. It's not just about power or money. It's about how we connect with people, how we treat them. And he paused, swallowing slightly. "I think I've been missing that. I've been missing real connections." Emma's eyes softened, but she remained silent, allowing him to continue. "I've learned more from you in these past few weeks than I've learned in years of business," Alex said, a slight chuckle escaping him. "And I think it's time I start applying what I've learned. Not just in my company, but in my life." Emma studied him for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "It's not just about learning the lessons, Mr. Johnson," she said softly. "It's about actually living them. Actions speak louder than words." Alex nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know," he said quietly. "I'm working on it. And I want to start with you. I want to show you that I can do better, that I can be better." Emma's smile was small but sincere. "I'm glad to hear that," she said. "But remember, change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process." Alex smiled, feeling something shift within him. "I'm willing to put in the work." As he stood to leave, he looked at her one last time, a feeling of contentment settling in his chest. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he was finally on the right path. "I'll see you soon, Emma," he said with a soft smile. Emma nodded, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. "Take care, Mr. Johnson." It had been a few weeks since Alex had come to the restaurant to speak with Emma, and as time passed, he found himself thinking about her more and more. He had kept his promise to himself to start seeing the world, and the people in it, differently. His behavior had shifted, and he had begun to treat others with the respect they deserved, no longer viewing them as tools for his own success. At work, his team had noticed the change. He wasn't the same driven, calculating leader he once was. There was a softness to him now, a willingness to listen, to learn. But even with all of the progress he'd made, something still felt incomplete. He couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't fully atoned for his past behavior, especially not with Emma. He knew he owed her more than just words. Alex decided that he needed to speak with her again, but this time, he wanted to do something different. He wanted to show her that he wasn't just apologizing for the past. He was making a change, for good. On a quiet evening, Alex walked into the restaurant once more. He had come up with a plan, something small but meaningful, to show Emma that he truly respected her. As he entered, the familiar sounds of clinking glasses and quiet chatter surrounded him, but his focus was entirely on Emma. He spotted her immediately. She was walking through the restaurant, her eyes scanning the room, moving with that same grace he had admired before. This time, she looked up and saw him, and her expression shifted from polite professionalism to a flicker of curiosity. Alex made his way over to her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Emma," he said, his voice steady but earnest. "Do you have a moment?" She nodded, her eyes meeting his. "Of course, Mr. Johnson. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to thank you," he said, his words coming out with more sincerity than he had ever intended. "Not just for your patience with me before, but for the way you've made me think about everything. About how I treat people, how I approach life. I don't know if I've fully expressed how much that has changed me." Emma studied him quietly, her expression neutral, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. "I appreciate that," she said softly, but there was something in her voice that hinted at the hesitation she still felt. "But I've noticed something else, too," Alex continued, taking a deep breath. "I've realized I need to do more than just talk about change. I need to act on it, and I want to show you that I can. So, I've decided to make a donation to A. 'Cause that means a lot to me, something I believe reflects the values you've taught me." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, holding it out to her. "This is a donation to a charity that helps provide education for underserved communities. I've always been focused on building my own wealth, but now I realize that real success is about giving back." Emma took the envelope from him, her eyes flicking from his face to the donation. She was quiet for a moment, and Alex couldn't tell if she was impressed or unsure. He felt a knot form in his stomach. "I'm not trying to buy forgiveness, Emma," he said quickly, his voice softer now. "I just want to show you that I'm serious. I want to live by the values I've learned, and that means making a tangible difference. You've changed the way I see the world, and I want to keep proving that to you." Emma finally looked up, her eyes searching his face. There was a long silence between them, the noise of the restaurant fading into the background. Then, slowly, she smiled. Just a little, but enough to make Alex's heart skip. "You've come a long way, Mr. Johnson," she said quietly. "But actions do speak louder than words. Keep showing up like this, and you'll prove it. I believe in second chances." Alex felt a weight lift from his chest, and for the first time, he realized how much he had been waiting for her approval. He wasn't sure what came next, but in that moment, he knew he was on the right path. "Thank you, Emma," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "I won't let you down." She nodded, and for the first time, Alex felt like he wasn't just a successful businessman. He was someone worthy of the respect and trust he had once taken for granted. Emma turned to continue her work, and Alex lingered for a moment longer, watching her move through the restaurant. There was still a long way to go, but he finally understood that the journey was worth it. And for the first time, he felt like he was truly living the life he had always wanted, one that went beyond just success, one where real change was possible. The weeks that followed Alex's last visit to the restaurant were filled with reflection. He had made progress, of course, changing the way he treated others, thinking beyond his own needs, and giving back to causes that mattered. But despite all of that, there was still an undeniable pull to Emma. It wasn't just about the way she had challenged him. It was the way she had made him see the world differently. He found himself thinking about her not just as a waitress, but as someone who had a life, a history, and values that made her far more than the uniform she wore. Alex knew he needed to make one more gesture, something that would prove to both her and himself that he wasn't the same man who had walked into her restaurant months ago. He had been working on a new project at the company, one that could help foster education and career opportunities for young people from underserved communities. But this time, he wanted Emma to be a part of it, to see that the change in him wasn't just for show. It was real, and it was lasting. One evening, as Alex sat at his desk, staring at the progress reports for the project, he finally picked up the phone and dialed the restaurant. His heart raced a little as he waited for someone to answer. "Hello, this is Lamian. How can I help you?" It was Emma's voice on the other end, and for a moment, Alex froze. "Emma," he said, his voice steady but warmer than usual. "It's Alex Johnson. I was wondering if you were free for coffee tomorrow." There was a slight pause, and Alex couldn't quite make out the expression in her voice, but when she spoke again, it was calm. "Mr. Johnson, sure. What time?" "How about noon?" he suggested. "I have something I'd like to discuss with you." "All right. I'll see you then," she replied before the call ended. The next day, Alex arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early, his thoughts once again turning to Emma. He had been thinking about how to phrase what he wanted to say. He knew it was important to be genuine, to show her that this wasn't just another apology, but something deeper, something real. When Emma walked in, she was dressed casually, her eyes scanning the room before landing on him. There was a softness in her gaze, but also an air of caution. She walked over and sat down across from him. "Good to see you, Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice polite, but not overly familiar. "You, too," Alex replied, offering a small smile. For a moment, there was a brief silence between them, and Alex realized how much he valued that simple moment. It wasn't about business or deals, it was about them as people. "I've been working on something," Alex began, his tone more serious now. "It's a project that aims to provide young people with opportunities in education and career development. I think it's important to give back, to make sure that everyone has a chance to succeed, regardless of where they come from." Emma listened attentively, her eyes focused on him. "That sounds like a great initiative," she said softly. "But what does that have to do with me?" Alex took a deep breath before continuing. "I want you to be involved in it," he said, his voice earnest. "I think your perspective, the way you see the world, could really help shape this project. I want you to be a part of something bigger." Emma's eyes widened slightly, a hint of surprise crossing her face. She hadn't expected that. "Why me?" she asked, her voice still calm, but now with an edge of curiosity. "Because," Alex said, leaning forward slightly, "you've taught me more than anyone in the last few months. About kindness, about humility, and about the value of hard work. I want to build something that reflects those same values, and I think you can help make it happen." Emma took a moment to process his words. Alex could see her thinking, weighing the offer, perhaps unsure if it was just another business transaction, another one of his grand gestures. "I'm flattered," she said finally, her voice quiet. "But why me? I'm just a waitress. Why do you think I can contribute to something like that?" Alex smiled, his eyes soft. "Because you're more than just a waitress, Emma. You're someone who sees people for who they truly are. And that's something this project needs." Emma paused, her gaze steady as she considered what he had said. Finally, she nodded. "I'll do it," she said, her voice confident. "I'll help." Alex felt a rush of relief and gratitude flood through him. He knew this was the beginning of something new, not just for the project, but for his relationship with Emma. He wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, he realized that the change he had been seeking was finally within reach. The days following their meeting were filled with a new sense of purpose for Alex. He had taken the first step, not only in offering Emma a place in his project, but in realizing that the kind of success he had always sought was no longer enough. The impact he made on others, the connections he forged, and the difference he could make in their lives. That was where the real value lay. As the project began to take shape, Alex found himself working more closely with Emma than he ever expected. She brought an authenticity to the work that he couldn't have imagined on his own. She was the voice of the people they were trying to help, young people from all walks of life, all with a story to tell and a dream to chase. Emma had become not only a partner in the project, but also a reminder of what he had been missing in his life all along. She was the grounding force that kept him focused on the bigger picture. One afternoon, they met to review the next phase of their plan. Emma had been busy organizing meetings with schools and local organizations, and Alex couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride as he watched her in action. Her attention to detail and her passion for helping others had elevated the project in ways he hadn't anticipated. "I think we're ready to move forward with the pilot program," Emma said, her eyes focused on the spreadsheet in front of her. "We have enough funding to get started, and I've spoken to a few schools that are excited to partner with us." Alex nodded, impressed by how much she had accomplished. "I knew I made the right choice in bringing you on," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Emma looked up from the papers, meeting his gaze. "I'm glad to be a part of it," she replied simply, her voice steady. There was no need for praise, no need for grand gestures. She had always preferred quiet sincerity, and Alex had come to understand that. They spent the next few hours reviewing the details, making plans, and discussing the next steps. As they wrapped up the meeting, Alex felt a shift inside him. This project had become more than just a way to give back. It had become a reflection of who he was now, someone who valued relationships and real connections over power and wealth. He looked at Emma, who was packing up her things to leave, and a thought crossed his mind. "I've been thinking," he said, breaking the silence. Emma turned to face him. About what? She asked, a curious expression on her face. About how much I've changed, Alex said quietly. I used to think success was all about being the best, about beating everyone else. But now, I see that it's about the people you help along the way. It's about making a difference, no matter how big or small. Emma smiled, a soft, understanding smile that made Alex feel like he was on the right path. I think you're starting to get it, she said, her voice warm but gentle. It's not about doing things for show. It's about doing them because they matter. Alex nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't perfect, and he didn't expect to be. But he was on a journey now, a journey that was about more than just business. It was about connection, about giving, and about being a better person. Thank you, he said, his voice sincere. For everything. Emma didn't respond right away, but her smile said it all. It's not over yet, she said softly. But you're on the right track. As they left the restaurant together, Alex felt a sense of calm he hadn't known in years. There was still much to be done, but for the first time, he was ready to face it with purpose. And as he walked beside Emma, he realized that the change he had been seeking had already begun. It had started the moment he had opened himself up to the possibility of something more. This was just the beginning, and he was ready to see where it would lead.